Hi everyone, this is Krista Moore and I'm so excited to have a guest in the studio today. Live and in person is Randy Nelson. And Randy and I have some history in Entrepreneurs Organization. I've known Randy for a few years and I'm thrilled that he's able to make the show. We have a lot to learn from Randy today, so thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. I think there's some of you that might not know Randy, and I'd love for you to get to know him and understand his background before we dive in to the subject today.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
First, I spent 7 years in the Navy as a submarine officer. I got to spend a couple years underneath the ocean. So I got out. You learn a lot about leadership when you're in the military, especially in the position that I was in. After that, the next 30 years, it's an entrepreneurship career. Our first business, we helped veterans coming out of the service, and 30 years down the road, we've helped 50,000 veterans get full-time employment. So we're very proud of that. But 30 years of building my own companies. The second company I sold and spent 4 years building it throughout Europe and Asia. And when that was done in 2013, my peer groups, they told me to write a book. So I wrote a book, and the last 6 years I've transitioned to becoming a speaker, advisor, teacher, mentor, giving back from an entrepreneurship and leadership side.
That's great. And one of the things that I want to add to that is what I really find about the books and the subjects in your books. I see it almost as a guide for entrepreneurs and business owners, kind of like a work-life guide or business and life combined, because you have lots of experiences to share on that.
Yeah, I've used the term checklist. I'm not trying to tell people what to do. I'm trying to get people to really think about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And the first book was more of a business-oriented book. The second book was a life-oriented book, and I think we'll talk a little bit about those today.
Well, I'd like to have you clarify something for me, because I've heard you say that you yourself are a bit of an addict, an entrepreneurial or a leadership addict, and that's kind of an interesting way to say it. So what exactly does that mean to you?
Well, I'll provide some context around it. I started in 1991 as an entrepreneur, and our first business was sold in 2007. At that point, I was already running another business, so there really wasn't any transition. We've got 6 kids, 6 grown kids and 6 grandkids. So,
yeah, that part I still can't get over, like the 6 kids and 6 grandkids.
6 grandkids, and the oldest grandson is in 3rd grade. So my oldest daughter is 35. So while building all these businesses, we were raising kids. 2007, we sold, but I was already running another business, so nothing changed.
You never had that break?
Yeah, I never had the break, nothing changed. And then in 2013, when I ended the other business, I think my wife was always thinking, okay, well, you sold your company, it's going to end.
Yeah, now I'm going to have you back into my life, and the family is going to see you more often.
Yeah, that's sort of how it's supposed to work from her side. So at the end of 13, we were getting pretty close to being empty nesters, and then I decided, well, I'm going to jump feet first into this speaking, and I published my first book in 15. So it's 2016. And I had published the first book. I was knee deep in speaking and building the coaching and advising business. And if you remember one of those times when you and your spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend are fighting at the very most in a public spot, and you're trying to not let other people.
A public spot.
Yeah,
that's happened once or twice, like in a restaurant.
Yeah, well, ours started
fighting, but
Ours started in Starbucks, and then it went to the next Starbucks, and then Delta Sky Club, and ultimately, it was my wife, it was my peer groups, it was my family that said, you're an addict. You simply cannot stop.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was the end, and then you started again. I thought it was the end, you started again. And my friends, they thought I'd play more golf, and it got to a point where I had to face the facts.
Well, that term addict, it's a negative connotation in terms of something that's bad, perhaps, or cannot be stopped, and if not stopped, could be very harmful, to your health or to your family in your regard. So I think she called you out on that. And
Yeah, she did not tell me what I wanted to hear. What she said was, she said, I love you. I'm not going to try to change you. I know who you are. I know what you love to do, but you need to make a choice. And if you want to keep doing exactly what you're doing, like you're doing it, we'll have a mediocre marriage. I'm not going to leave you. I have plenty of other things I can do without you and I being together all the time. So it's a perfect question, perfect way to put it, because she put it on me, and I had a choice. I could decide I was still all in, or I had to make some choices. And I think, for the last 5 years, I have some significant life changes that I'm still as driven as I've ever been. I'm still as addicted, but I now manage it very differently.
And I think that most of us can be thinking about our own lives and times when we felt like we weren't giving enough to the other side of our life, and focused so much and being so intentional on building businesses or working, and probably needed to hear what you heard, and maybe even sooner in our careers. So I'm curious what you did with that information and what we can learn from today as takeaways. What did you start doing that you can share with others in terms of making some additional decisions on how you were going to kind of live your life or operate?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the interesting piece is my second book that I was writing while this was going on is The Third Decision. The Second Decision book was all about, are you the right person in the right seat, and getting qualified in business. The Third Decision, it was built around the top regrets we typically have in our lives. And it's built around the studies that have shown at the end of life, you look back and you say, what did I regret? And it's every aspect of your personal life, whether it's your health, your mental health, your physical health, your love, marriage, family, friends. So as
that's
I was,
kind of what rises up as part of the regrets.
Yes.
Not that I, didn't go to work on Saturdays more.
There's never been a person who said, boy, I wish I worked more. So I think ultimately, and I write about this in the book, it's impossible for you to be the very best father while you're being the very best entrepreneur, or the very best husband while you're being the best entrepreneur. So what I think the first lesson is that there are consequences to the choices that we make, and we can pretend that we're doing the greatest job in both, but the fact is you simply can't.
All right, I'm getting called out because this is really resonating with me.
How come?
When I was working for corporate America, I had 2 young children, and our family moved 15 times in 10 years, for promotions or the next big opportunity. And I was allowing that to drive my behavior at the sacrifice of being what I would consider a better mom. And I had an aha moment when the kids were 9 and 11 is when I quit that lifestyle, that corporate job. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, who's 25 today, she's told me the story. She's like, Mom, don't you remember that day that you quit, Corporate Express? The next day I was sick. I played sick so that I could be home with you all day.
Wow.
I'm like, no, I mean, she's telling me this just last year.
That's pretty
cool.
And
I'm thinking, I don't remember that, but to her, she knew that she could have my time and that I was going to be home all day, and she was going to be sick so that she could spend time with me.
Yeah. And I think, a critical aspect of this is and what I write about, there's no judgment. It's more self-awareness. And it's just being aware of the decisions we make have consequences. Just be self-aware of what we're doing. And then you can have a great life. You can be the best entrepreneur, and then put that aside and be the best spouse. But it's impossible to do both at the same time.
I find that I kind of compartmentalize those things. It's hard for me to be both at the same time. So I'm either all in like you are, it's all or nothing. And we've given it all we've got, to work frequently. I'm thinking about a time though that I kind of changed my mindset around that. And I'm wondering if that just comes with experience, with maturity, or maybe, now that my parents are gone or that I'm a grandparent. I mean, do you think a lot of it has to do with where we are?
I think
life?
some of it does.
Mhm.
I think some of it does. And the third decision book is my lesson number one is develop personal non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
And a non-negotiable, here's the words that don't work. I'm going to try. I know I should. I really should. I want to. Those will never happen. Anytime you say those things, those are not non-negotiable. Non-negotiable, you're not willing to discuss. You're not open for compromise. So for me, with our 6 kids, what was non-negotiable was coaching my 2 boys in baseball. From
Mm-hmm.
7 to 15, I was the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't the assistant. I wasn't there whenever my schedule allowed me to be. I was the head coach. And I was the other non-negotiable was to be at the kids' activities. So I practiced this before.
Yeah, I like that.
I practiced it before I wrote it because another side, as I was writing the third decision, I did hand my wife the draft along the way, and she called me out on some of them. So that it was, she said I didn't help as much as homework as I thought I did. Non-negotiables can be, they don't have to happen when you're 60 years old or 50 years old. They can happen at 20.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that just that one, we're going to go through kind of 3 key things that you learned along the way that you're sharing with other entrepreneurs. And that one, setting those non-negotiables, I mean, that in itself could be life-changing. I mean, first off, you're focusing on you and what's in your heart and what you want to make sure no one, takes over or controls. You've got control over it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a decision that you've made for the right reasons, and it's non-negotiable. I like that.
Yes, and I'll give you an example. So in my wife and I, the time that we spent.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about when coaching the kids was non-negotiable, now a non-negotiable for me is that we set our time first on the calendar. So for 2019, we said, here's everything we want to do. Here's the vacation we want. Here's the time we want to spend. It's on the calendar first.
And we're working around that.
We work around that.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many years, it was done the opposite. And I can't tell you, because I had a chance to speak on the business circuit for 3 years. It is just so easy to fall into, well, I know I need to do that, but it's just not the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's never going to be the right time.
Well, and it's like your priorities get messed up,
And it's what's amazing is if you set it, I guess what, anybody who's listening to this right now,
mm-hmm.
ask yourself the last time you missed a meeting on purpose. You show up for all of them.
That's right.
So if you set a meeting with yourself and your significant other, your wife, your spouse, your husband,
that's your responsibility.
That's your meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That happens first.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think you know this, but I'm in business with my husband, and so you're dealing with work and life dynamics all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we've learned to do is kind of separate that a bit more to make sure that the work doesn't always feed into our discussions over coffee in the morning or when we're out to dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think we need to be better at that. I think that needs to be a non-negotiable.
First of all, I give you credit for doing that. I'm not sure.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So
No.
Good for you for doing that.
Well, the only reason I think it works is because Eddie's only in the office maybe 1 day a week.
Okay.
Because he's on site with clients mostly. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, good for you.
One of us would be gone.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I could make that work.
Yeah. So number 1 was non-negotiable. What is the second kind of question or reflection or tip that you can provide?
So as part of my, again, writing the book was one thing, and then as I have my own business that I've worked with leaders and leadership teams over the last 5 or 6 years. I'm a big fan of Vern Harnish. He's written Rockefeller Habits, and some of the people who are listening probably have done Traction, EOS, or Rockefeller Habits. Mm-hmm. And I think when you hear the term goals, everybody knows goals. Everybody knows, well, I'm not gonna say everybody, but everyone knows what goals are. Rocks are the same thing. And if you think about a square, and you just draw a line and put it in half. the top of it is your must-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And the must-do, I would add two components. Those are your goals. Those are your rocks.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you say yes to. So that's nothing new to anybody. Okay, we all know that we have to have our priorities, and you set those. So up in that top half of this is your top 5 rocks and goals.
Mm-hmm.
The second component that I've added is what I call the should do list. And the should do from a company, as you're building a company, it's really the maybe list.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the yes list, because I like to ask people what's on your to-do list, and
Sure.
I have 50, 100, 200 things. So the should do, there's two components. It's a maybe list,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other is it's where you're being pulled by your customer. So that we can sell anything we want to, but we're pushing when we sell. We're trying to get somebody to buy something they don't want to buy or they don't know about. So the should list, I'd recommend everybody to come up with a should list. And this is where you're hearing from your customers, I really would love you to do this. It's where you're getting pulled into the market.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
The last one was the game changer for me. And there's a I don't know if Jim Collins has written a bunch of great books. Morton Hansen wrote the last one with him, Good to Great, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then, or Great by Choice, Morton Hansen wrote. And then he wrote another book called Great at Work, where he said, do less than obsess. Now
Do less
do less than obsess.
than obsess.
And I've always heard, what's important. Steve Jobs says the most important thing is what you say no to. So I've got my must list, which is my top 5. Yes, this is what I'm committing to. I have the should, which is where I'm being pulled from customers. So I have a filter now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm considering them. I'm not there yet. The could do list. This is where the key part of it is you can make money doing the could do list. So these are all things that if you think about your business, hey, I should try this. I should try this. Maybe it works. It feels good. It's activity. It's busy work. But the could do list that you can make money is what you absolutely say no to. So what freed me up in the last.
It almost sounds counterintuitive.
What do you mean?
Well, I'm thinking most people, what drives them is the could.
Absolutely it does.
So it's easy to say, I think I'll do that, or yeah, let me jump. I mean, if I get an idea or this is a possibility, I put a lot of attention on that
especially entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. And especially when I hear you saying that's your no list, that's where I say it sounds counterintuitive.
And what if you think about the whole work-life blending,
mm-hmm.
what in the end, what I have become significantly better at is being present when I'm present. And what held me back was this to-do list, being driven by challenge. When you've got a to-do list of 100 things,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to get through them. But you're going to get through them at 11 o'clock at night, at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going to be thinking about them at 3 in the morning. The no list is it frees you up. It frees you up to do a number of things. First of all, you already have your should. That's where all your good ideas can go that you're still considering as maybes.
Mm-hmm.
And it frees you up to focus on the most important thing.
But the should, if I understood that correctly, is based on what your customers want and need, the market. And then the could is based on these like ideas that pop up.
And it's really the
that
key
aren't part of the first list.
Well, the coulds, the most important is these are things you can make money at.
Mm-hmm.
So they're things that when you think entrepreneurial and if you have no plan, the best way I can describe it is if you have no plan, somebody says, hey, I just had a great idea. You think we should try it? The answer is always yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe it'll work, maybe it won't.
Yeah.
But what happens is it clutters so much. So for the last few years, the most freeing thing, hate to admit it, but at age 55, I put my first out of the office email. I didn't think I was allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can't wait to put it. In fact, I extend it because it's just so fun to put it out because I know I don't have to respond to anybody. And I can do that because I'm so clear on what I'm not going to do, and it doesn't clutter me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, I'm taking notes from the interview because I'm thinking I'm totally messed up on the could know thing.
You are 100% correct. It's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And here's the two words. The could do is busy.
Mm-hmm.
The must is productive.
Yeah, it's kind of like that 4-quadrant time management,
mm-hmm.
but really looking at it very differently.
The key is that you can make money from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the different.
Well, and the should is different. The should is what's important to your customer, I mean, at the end of the day, as we're building businesses, that's what we can't forget about,
And we do.
And we do.
Yeah, because we have really good ideas that we're going to push to our customers, but.
I like all that.
Yeah.
So really what I'm hearing you say is learn to love to say no.
Be confident that saying no, and yes, learn to love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, this isn't a perfect world. If something changes dramatically, that a no all of a sudden becomes a yes. I'm not saying that's not going to happen,
Yeah.
but just be intentional about it. Don't all of a sudden have 50 yeses, because then you start getting yourself in trouble again.
Got it. And then what would you say the third tip would be when it comes to really kind of guiding your business and life better as we're describing?
Yeah, let me add one component to the last
Sure.
one that I think may help when people are thinking about the must, should, and could. I've heard this thumb rule. When you're growing less than 10% a year, write a business plan that's good for a year. 50% a year, your business plan is probably going to change every quarter. And when you're growing over 100%, it'll change monthly. So if you're a slower growth company,
Mm-hmm.
that must, should, could, it probably can last for a long time.
Yeah.
If you're growing at a really rapid pace, it's going to change dramatically. So just be careful. It's a model, but it has to be used
Mm-hmm.
with each of the companies so that it's used the right way.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking, well, if they're growing rapidly, then maybe they just, change it or review it and have like a 5-year plan opposed to a quarterly plan. It's like the opposite, right?
Yeah, just subject to change.
Exactly.
Everything has, it's a model that it frees you up if you can say no. That's what I'll do.
Well, one of the things that I heard you say and write frequently about is being present, and really what that means to be present with the time that you have, whether it is in life and at home or family or at work. What are some things that you would recommend people do to start to be thinking about, physically and mentally being present?
Yeah, and I'll use a story, an example. Again, while I'm writing the book, I've already talked about the addiction that
Mm-hmm.
came out. While writing this book, and we've got six kids, and they started having their own kids. In 2017, in March, we got the call that you just don't want to get, and that is our 3-year-old grandson got cancer. He was diagnosed with Wilms tumor, which is when you look at kids' cancers, it's really not a horrible one because you can cure it. But when you look at the extreme of everything, his was the worst of the worst of the worst, and he ended up passing away on Father's Day in 2018.
I'm so sorry.
Which, well, thank you. I hope nobody has to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say that. Well, the question that I would say that I would ask everybody to think about is, if you have a personal crisis in your life, what would you stop doing now, right now? So mine was an extreme, and I'm now at the point where I can think about it. I'm a leadership teacher. So
Yes.
I didn't really care about teaching leadership, at Father's Day last year. It's been way too personal. But as I'm now a little bit past it, and I can think about what I've learned from Avery, I stopped doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and I stopped doing things that I just didn't need to be doing. So if I could ask everybody to think about in your business life, that's your no. So what do you need to say no to? In your personal life, if you had to say no and just stop doing things,
Yeah.
what would those things be? And I think the lesson for me was I was involved with so many things,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't restarted them. So when I talk about being present when I'm present, it's the non-negotiable drives. That's sort of a guiding piece for
Yes.
me. The no's in business allow me to just free up and not have to worry about so much stuff. And the stop takes the stuff I don't need to be doing away.
Mm-hmm.
There were things that I was involved with that were okay. I learned this in one of the classes that I went to. Look at things that are irritating, okay, and fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing a lot of okay things that were okay, and I've been doing them for a long time. But when I had to stop doing some things, it became really clear take a back seat.
Yeah.
So if you want
What a powerful question that is. I had never really thought about that. So if there's a personal crisis in your life, what would you stop? I mean,
you don't have the time.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's take it from a just whatever the crisis it is. You simply don't have the time, and you know your priorities are somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I also would challenge everybody to not restart it. It's easy to get through a crisis and then go back to exactly what you were.
Well, thank you for sharing that personal story about your grandson. And I think all of us can kind of relate to, life's too short. We don't want to have those regrets. And how can we make sure that we deal with or handle what might be perceived as an addiction, with our jobs and our business and our work. And this was very helpful, I think. Yeah, you use some terminology, know yourself. Is it improve yourself and complement yourself? And we talked about that right before the show. And I want our audience to hear those, and if you could just succinctly describe why those three messages are so meaningful.
Yeah, two greatest lessons I've learned in life. Number one, listen with the intent to understand, not reply. That's a Stephen Covey, and it's by far the most powerful. Number two, improve your self-awareness. Self-awareness, I think the easiest definition for me was know thyself, improve thyself, complement. And it's not compliment, tell yourself
feel good.
Yeah, it's complement yourself with somebody else. So the know thyself, when I took a strength finder assessment, that my top strength was achiever. That helped me understand that I'm driven by challenge and that I have to somehow manage that moving forward. So the know thyself everyone should have. I'm a big believer now in assessments. So if you've got them, figure out who you are. Improve, that's on you. So I like to challenge you to grow your leadership skills as fast as your company's growing and to double your personal capacity every 3 years. So the improve thyself is on you.
But first, that knowing thyself comes first, right? Really doing that self-discovery and creating awareness around the areas that you do need to improve.
Yeah, and I think now one of the most important is complement. I think who you have around you, we each have unique strengths, and so does everybody else have unique strengths. So if you can surround yourself with people who that you complement yourself so that you're doing what you're uniquely strong at, it's a great place to be. And self-awareness is the fatal flaw of a leader is their lack of self-awareness.
I would agree. And we speak and write a lot around the same concepts. In Race to Amazing, there's so much at the beginning of the book about creating that self-awareness and self-assessing to understand, and the 10-year-old self program that we talked about a little bit. I wanted to ask you, because I'm really curious, tell me what you were doing when you were 10.
Well, this is the most ironic piece. Is my wife is a voracious reader. I hated reading when I was young. So to think that I'm writing books.
Those are really heavy too.
They're heavy books,
they're
right?
Quite impressive.
30-second decision. So when I was 10 years old, I was playing every sport that I could play. I was watching Batman, who just turned 80, right? Big celebration around the world. I wasn't reading books, I can tell you that. I just love playing sports. I had two older brothers who played. And I think I had some entrepreneurial things in me. But I grew up in Western New York. So it's a blue collar town. You grew up to work hard and try your best, and it's just ironic.
Well, what's funny though, make that connection because you've done that self-assessing, that achiever is number one on your top 5. And so it wasn't about writing the book, it was achieving it.
It was about achieving it, right? Okay, there's one, there's 2.
And then you weren't satisfied. You've got 1, 2, and now you're writing 3, and you're already thinking about 4.
Well, I'll have 4, but I'm going to do it on my terms now.
That's the difference.
And I'm gonna enjoy it.
So book number 3 really helped you.
This was a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was a life changer, and it was a life changer on many different fronts. But this was, this is where my passion is right now is to help people still achieve what they want to achieve, but enjoy it a little bit more along the way.
Well, I just want to add one more comment to what you said about complimenting yourself. Both you and I have experience with the Entrepreneurs Organization.
Mhm.
You remember, I don't know how many years you remember.
I was
remember?
at 20 years and then I'm a sponsor
Yeah,
now. But
okay. I was involved for about 5 years, and that was my first realization of the power of having other like-minded people kind of compliment you or be a part of your life and helping you make decisions and deal with challenges. And since then, I co-founded Office Products Women in Leadership, which is a group
Good for you.
that uses the same forum type mastermind.
Mhm.
And we really do encourage that. We just had our 4th annual retreat last weekend. So there were
Good for you.
14 of us that went away for that. But I think that we forget, because we get busy, right? How important it is to be hanging out with the right people.
I would not be here if I had not been in those forums.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think that's good advice for anybody that's on the
Absolutely.
line. If you don't have your tribe, or that
Get one.
group that can support you.
And there's EO, there's Vistage, there's
Yeah, you've been
YPO.
very involved in Vistage.
Yes.
And that's in every city.
Whatever it is, I think that helps your self-awareness too.
Mhm.
Because you can't, self-awareness is not one thing you wake up and say, hey, I'm really bad at this.
Yeah.
You need some people to help you along the way.
Like your wife.
Like your wife and like your Vistage group and your EO group.
That's right.
Your friends. So yes,
That's
I,
right.
I absolutely agree with you. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah.
Everybody here should be informed, should be in a peer group or
Mhm.
somebody to turn to.
Perfect. Well, we could talk for a long time, but
Yeah, we
I think
could.
our time is up. So I'm going to need to say goodbye to you. But if you could maybe look at this last slide. We put some information where people can reach out to you or get a hold of you.
Mhm.
Any best way to get connected that you'd like to leave the show with?
I think there's a website there. I think I have a newsletter that I put out once a month, and I ask a question, one question a month, and it's a provocative question. I'll leave you with this one because the contact information is on there. But there was a Intel in the 1980s. The CEO and the COO said, "What are we missing?" So here's my question. I'll leave you with. You're fired. It's 1 year from today. So everyone in here was fired today. It's 1 year from today. Your replacement has been wildly successful. What are the 3 major changes they made that you didn't want to do, chose not to do, or didn't know how to do? And I think when you think about that, those are the types of questions.
That's a good one.
In the newsletter, I like to get people thinking because I think that's where the growth comes from.
Mhm.
So think about that. What would your replacement do that they were really successful? Didn't know what to do, didn't know how to do, or you just decided I'm not going to do
Isn't
it.
that something? Because we would want our successor to not be successful.
Yes. And the newsletter's on the website. So if you want more questions like that, I'd love to ask you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And
Thanks
I
for having
appreciate
me.
you, providing us the time to spend with you today.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everything you do.
Take care, everyone. See you next Wednesday, 2 o'clock.